So if you were BMW, would you separate out the 3, 5 and 7 series and have a different factory, a different sales department, different marketing department, different showroom and everything?
Yeah. Well,
they may have already done quite a bit of that. Maybe the showroom's the only bit that's the same, actually. Because I hadn't thought about that. Because if you did that, then you would know which one was profitable and which one wasn't, wouldn't you?
Indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the
You'd
challenge...
have a separate paint shop for the, and all that sort. You'd have actually a different production line. They probably have a different production line for each one anyway, don't they? So they can already do that.
But let's go and...
But they probably haven't separated out the HR department and the purchasing department.
Fantastic.
Which they should separate. Because then they could allocate those to each.
I want to explore that, okay? And I want to explore it in the lean framework. Most people will know something about lean. But essentially, it's there to address waste in the organisation. So you look at transportation as a waste. Inventory as a waste. You're looking at, process waste.
Does lean push you towards combining things or to cutting things up?
Well, let's say it does all of the positive things about trying to reduce waste in your organisation. Apart from the biggest waste by far is the bureaucratic structure that overlays your model of work. So you can save, 10%, 20%
within the factory,
and within the design office using agile and such techniques, and think, that's a fantastic job. But I bet you, that your bureaucracy has increased in cost to compensate for all the saving that's been made down here in the design and the sales and
even if you have made a 10% improvement in the factory, even if it hasn't added anything, you've still got a massive, great amount of waste going on in all the support departments.
So this was the revelation that Julian and I came to. He said, wait a minute here. There's this. If we look at our business, 50% of the salaries were going out in some sort of bureaucratic function or not, or another. Whether that be a storeman to manage the stores, production control, quality control, HR,
purchasing,
exactly,
finance,
fantastic.
IT,
all these things. You say, wait a minute,
management,
and these were just thrown out and lumped into indirects.
Yeah,
and you go, well, this is a huge amount of money. This is not a little bit of money. So the move was to say, well, how do we get these folks down here who are actually adding the value in sales, design, and manufacture or production, to do all the jobs of this lot here. Because if we do that, we've got a massively profitable unit. Literally, we can take all the cost of the bureaucracy and take it to the bottom line. Not all of it, but a substantial proportion of it.
But devil's advocate here, wouldn't you be you take the purchasing, suppose you've got 10 people in purchasing and it's costing you, 100 grand or something, let's say, I don't know. If you no, it'd be more than that. But if you put let's say $1 million then. If you put all that bit of purchasing onto all the production people, aren't they going to be doing the same amount, but you've just spread it out instead of having it as one lump? Haven't you just got lots of little lumps that still add up to £1 million?
So let's say yes.
Devil's advocate.
Let's say that yes. The only thing is
possibly more because you divided it down.
Well, your $1 million, first of all, is focused somewhat on the pay rates of purchasing people,
which might be higher than production people. True.
Yeah. And you give them more perks. You give them pensions and healthcare and holidays and sickness and
supplier wages.
Yeah.
So that's one factor. But let's suppose the purchasing are paid the same as production.
That's not likely, but let's say they are.
Yeah.
Let's say they are. So then, at worst, you've then taken your £1 million production purchasing costs, and you've now spread it over your production stuff. What I'm going to say is you've got to give them time to do it because it's really a time issue. So therefore, you've got to have more production people.
Yes,
and they'll cost the £1 million extra.
Yeah.
Okay. But you have got more production people now, which means to say you've now got some buffer in the system because those purchasing people weren't on a quiet day going to come and help out in production, were they?
No.
They weren't going to add value when they were short of work.
That's true. So utilisation is going to be better with this new system.
Yeah.
Now,
but also the incentive to reduce it. Because purchasing are never going to want to say, let's spend less time purchasing. Whereas the production people are thinking, if I could buy that quicker, I would.
Right. Now, the next thing is, when you say buy that, the production person knows what that is.
So you don't have the communication problem.
There's no communication problems.
Why have they bought this? This isn't what we want.
Yeah. Or they've saved money on buying something that's slightly cheaper, but it's no longer fit for purpose, or we have to modify it in order to make it work.
Yes.
So, they bought a slightly cheaper piece of aluminium, which has not been heat treated as well. So you've got to skim it first to make it flat.
Well, there's a cleaning company I know who bought cheaper bags, but the actual cleaners said these are too thin.
Double bag them.
So they double bag.
Yeah.
So this cost more.
Yeah.
And the purchasing department just had no idea about what you even use a bag for, and that's an easy example. So I totally get that. The production would rather do the buying.
Yeah, and these kind of naive production people, naive in terms of purchasing, well,
allegedly
they spend their salary every year, don't they?
Yeah, they've got mortgages and they buy cars in their spare time and everything.
Right. So they can negotiate for big things and small things in their everyday life.
They might be more incentivized to negotiate, actually, because if they've got ownership of the job, they're going to get a good deal, where, if they're getting a share of the profit as well. Yeah. Whereas the purchasing department probably, in a way, don't care whether they pay more or less for things, because they're just, do they have a budget? Not really.
Now, and we've trying to get away from this imaginary world where you're Henry Ford and you've got this well-oiled machine of a production line. Actually, things go in fits and starts. You get projects in and projects out. You're busy and you're not busy. So what we have now is we've got all our production people who are doing some purchasing. So when that big project comes in, we've got a lot of purchasing hands can focus on it.
Yes. Whereas some companies, they might have one purchasing person.
Or 10, like in your example.
But even if you could have one, and we're going to spread it over 10 people who are going to do 10% each.
Yeah.
And that has to give us more security and more resilience, if you like.
Yeah.
If that one person's off sick,
yeah.
or if we're twice as busy, that one person can't go to 200%, whereas each of the production people can go from 10 to 20.
So now you see, in this example I had before, when I delved down into the numbers, they weren't consistent when I dug down to the details.
Yeah.
Where were we losing money? Where were we making money? It was a bit of a random journey when you got down to the minutiae of things. And by having lots of people who were equally skilled at, say, purchasing and equally experienced in the parts they were purchasing, that meant we had this huge opportunity to deal with the unexpected. And that really smoothed out logistics. So all the delays in our purchasing team disappeared.
So central purchasing works really well if you've got really smooth demand of exactly the same thing, but that's never life.
Well,
and when you've got big variations, then the central system struggles. Or big changes in what you're buying.
And I'm not sure I agree with that, Chris, that assumption you've made there, because it's a very costly way of doing it. Because ultimately,
to divide it down and give it to production,
to specialise with a purchasing function, they're not cheap.
Oh, okay.
They're very expensive, and when you have a contract, there's a thing called P, which is price. And that's what you get for it, and that's usually globalised because there's a global market price for oil, whatever it is.
But the normal argument is that the purchasing people are expert negotiators. They really understand the procurement process much more than anyone else ever could, and therefore they do it better. I mean, that's the traditional belief.
Let's say yes. Let's say yes to that, yeah. But, given that everything isn't, going back to Julian, totally smooth, sometimes purchasing departments are busy, sometimes they're quiet, and in the quiet times they're not being moved to the sales department. They're not being moved to the production department because they're fixed. It's a fixed cost. And
they're incentivized to build a nest and grow and get bigger.
Fantastic, but they're also incentivized to reduce the price and not really worry about the quality, because that's not how they're rewarded. The sweet spot in that department is constantly reducing the cost to the business and the price of goods. So I'm not sure just by splitting it up and making that assumption that it would all be perfect is correct. The guys in the shop floor still have to pass a purchase order requisition to the purchasing department, even if it's electronic. They've still got to put it in, and all that work has to be done. Whereas
I've got customers who say we'd love to have you, but unfortunately we have to go through procurement. And there's somebody slightly cheaper who's utterly useless, but we have to buy them because they're cheaper. And I've had other people who've said, procurement are giving us somebody who's more expensive than you and worse, but there's some political reason why they have to buy them. And so many things go wrong when it has to go through a department who are incentivized by the wrong measures.
Absolutely.